80% of people, when asked about their deepest regret, don't say money, they don't say career, they say family. The words they never said, the apologies they never gave, the phone calls they never made, the people they lost before they showed up fully. And yet, we don't talk about that. We talk about growth, we talk about independence, we glorify detachment like it's enlightenment. But what if all our striving, all our building, all our high-performance hustle has become a clever way of running from the very people who shaped us? Carl Jung once said, "The self is revealed in deeds, and deeds always mean relationship." But many of us have built our lives on a contradiction, trying to find ourselves by staying far away from anyone who reminds us who we were. You can master your habits, you can win your morning routine, you can stack cash, own the room and control every outcome, and still walk into your childhood home and feel 10 years old again. Still avoid your sister's eyes at the dinner table. Still feel like your father never really saw you, and that is not failure. That's a wound, still speaking. Zig Ziglar warned us, many people climb the ladder of success only to realize it was leaning against the wrong wall. That wall, it's often the one we built to keep love at a manageable distance. And we were rewarded for it. We were praised for our boundaries, for our discipline, for becoming unbothered. But being unbothered is not the same as being whole. Sometimes the very people we push away are the mirrors we need most, not because they validate us, but because they remind us of the unfinished work we tried to escape. You can leave the house, you can change your last name, you can silence the calls, but you cannot outrun the emotional DNA that shaped your nervous system. You flinch when someone gets too close. You feel guilt when you rest. You crave praise but mistrust it when it comes. That's not personality, that's programming. And at some point, no matter how far you run, the echoes catch up. The soul of family isn't about blood. It's about the space inside you where belonging was formed or fractured. And if you're not careful, you'll build an empire with no one to come home to. You'll hit every goal and find yourself in a room full of strangers clapping while your heart whispers the name of someone you never called back. But that ache is sacred. It means you're still human. It means the part of you that longs to be known hasn't given up yet. So pause. Before the next meeting, before the next milestone, before you climb another ladder that leads nowhere real, ask yourself the question no one dares to ask: who will sit with me when I am no longer impressive? Because that's where the soul of family begins. Not in perfection, but in presence. Not in legacy, but in return. Not in applause, but in the quiet recognition that someone still remembers who you were before the world told you who to become. And that is everything. Family doesn't ask who you've become. It reminds you of who you were and who you still are. It shows up uninvited in your voice when you're angry, in the guilt that follows joy, in the way you freeze when someone raises their tone. Carl Jung once said, nothing has a stronger influence psychologically on a child than the life which the parents have not lived. And you know it's true, because some of the things you struggle with most aren't yours. They're inherited. You didn't choose them, but you breathe them every day. Your mother's fear of being a burden, your father's avoidance of affection, your family's deep belief that love must be earned. These aren't just memories, they're instructions coded into your muscles, your reactions, your silence, and so you perform. Not because you're fake, but because somewhere deep inside, you learned that performance gets you love, you people please, you over-explain, you shrink, you apologize for having needs. That's not personality, that's survival. Alfred Adler warned that a fight with a child is always a losing fight. Love cannot be won by force. But that's how many of us were raised. Do what I say, because I said so. Don't be disrespectful. Translation: don't challenge my fear. Don't trigger my shame. Don't make me feel what I haven't processed yet. And now we're adults, raising children, navigating marriages, building businesses, still reacting from a childhood script we never edited. You think you're fighting with your partner, but really you're arguing with your mother's silence. You think your child is rebellious, but really they're challenging the very voice inside you that was never allowed to speak. Family is not just where love lives, it's where your shadow waits. The part of you that's unhealed, the part that you avoid in therapy, the part that shows up not in crisis, but in the quiet, in the way you flinch at praise, in the way you brace for rejection, in the way you sabotage closeness. Carl Jung taught us that the shadow doesn't disappear through avoidance. It integrates through awareness, and nowhere is that process more visible than in your closest relationships, because family is the first mirror, and mirrors don't lie. They reflect what you hide and what you hope to become. They reveal the wound and the way home. But here's the hard truth. You won't find healing by demanding your family change. You'll find it the moment you stop performing and start relating. The moment you stop trying to be right and start trying to be real. That might mean initiating the hard conversation, or setting a boundary your ancestors never dared to draw, or breaking a silence that has lasted generations. It will feel unnatural, it will feel risky, it will feel like betrayal, but it isn't. It's the turning point. Because when you look into the eyes of someone you've been avoiding and choose to see their humanity instead of their history, that's when the soul of family reveals itself, not as a prison, but as a passage, a chance to alchemize pain into compassion, projection into presence, story into choice. And you don't have to fix everything, you just have to go first. That's where healing begins. That's where legacy begins. That's where you begin. Not as the child they shaped, but as the author of a new story. The mirror is waiting. And this time, you don't have to look away. You can love someone deeply and still want to run when they walk into the room. You can belong to a family and still feel like a stranger inside it. You can be grateful for what they gave you and still carry the ache of what they didn't know how to give. This is the unspoken truth about family. It's where our deepest love lives and where our deepest wounds are born. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the parts of us we disown, suppress, or exile in order to be accepted. And nowhere does the shadow emerge more vividly than with the people who've known us longest. The moment your daughter challenges your authority and you feel rage that doesn't match the moment. The second your partner withdraws and it feels like your childhood all over again. The casual remark from your brother that leaves you spiraling for hours. Family doesn't just raise us, it reactivates us, and what we don't heal, we repeat, we project, we defend. We react as if we're fighting the present, but really, we're battling ghosts from the past. You think you're arguing about a missed phone call, but you're really confronting years of feeling like an afterthought. You think you're angry that they didn't support your decision, but what's surfacing is the ache of never feeling fully seen. This is how the shadow works. It doesn't announce itself, it hides behind patterns, it speaks in overreactions, it hijacks the moment and replaces truth with defense. And unless we name it, we'll pass it forward, like a script rehearsed for generations. Your father shut down when emotions rose. You told yourself you'd never be like him. But here you are, going quiet when your own child cries. Your mother managed everything, even the love. You hated it. And now you're organizing your partner's feelings before they even speak. This is how unhealed pain becomes legacy, not through cruelty, through repetition. We become what we didn't understand. We echo what we swore we'd end. And if we're not careful, we'll confuse survival for identity and call it just the way I am. But Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So stop before the next fight, before the next shutdown, before the next overcorrection that you'll later regret. Ask yourself, what's really happening here? What part of me feels small? Whose voice is echoing through mine? Because the moment you recognize the pattern, you reclaim the power. You realize your anger isn't just anger, it's grief. Your coldness isn't strength, it's protection. Your need to control isn't certainty, it's fear. And that awareness, that's the turning point. That's where the soul of family can re-enter, not as judgment, not as history, but as the sacred space where you choose to stop rehearsing your pain and start rewriting your role. You are not your father's silence. You are not your mother's guilt. You are not your sibling's resentment. You are the place where the pattern pauses, the place where healing interrupts momentum, where compassion confronts instinct, where someone finally says, "This ends with me." And it won't be perfect. You'll still flinch, you'll still stumble. But you'll stumble forward into presence, into connection that no longer depends on control, into love that no longer trades in conditions, because that's where the soul of family lives, not in being right, but in being real. And nothing is more real than this. You can't heal the family you came from, but you can become the root of something new. Forgiveness sounds noble until it asks you to go first, until it asks you to let go of the apology you never got, until it asks you to soften your grip on a story you've carried like armor, until it asks you to choose peace when everything in you still wants justice. But that's the fire, and if you can walk into it, you'll come out whole. Joe Avila was a man who had no right to be forgiven. He killed a teenage girl, Amy Wall, in a drunk driving accident. He went to prison. He wept in silence. He assumed he'd carry his guilt forever, until one day Amy's father, Sir Rick Wall, asked to meet him. Joe expected hate. He expected condemnation. What he didn't expect was love. Rick Wall looked the man who took his daughter's life in the eyes and said, "I forgive you, and then I love you." Joe collapsed, because that kind of forgiveness doesn't make sense. It makes soul. It doesn't erase the loss. It transforms it. It rewrites it into something the world can't explain, but the heart instantly recognizes. Oscar Wilde once wrote, "Children begin by loving their parents. As they grow older, they judge them. Rarely, if ever, do they forgive them." But you are not bound to rarity. You can be the one who forgives, not because they deserve it, but because you do. You deserve to stop carrying what they never knew how to hold. You deserve to release yourself from the emotional contract that kept you stuck. You deserve to be free. Forgiveness isn't a gift you give to them. It's a homecoming you give to yourself. It's not weak. It's not naive. It's not pretending it didn't happen. It's choosing not to let what happened own the rest of you. And it starts in the smallest moments, the sigh instead of the snap, the pause before the pushback, the call you've rehearsed 1,000 times but never made. Sometimes forgiveness isn't grand, it's subtle, it's invisible. It's the decision to not pass the pain forward. It's hugging your child even though you weren't hugged. It's hearing your parents' story instead of correcting their memory. It's allowing grief and not needing someone to blame, because when you light the fire of forgiveness, you're not just healing yourself, you're healing the space, you're healing your lineage, you're healing every child who comes after you by showing them that love can outlast pain. The soul of family is not made in harmony, it's made in the choice to return after everything broke, to choose tenderness over distance, to choose humanity over history, to choose "I love you" over "I win." And maybe the one you need to forgive is the younger version of yourself who didn't know how to stay soft. Forgive them, hold them, and then become the person they were praying would show up. There's a kind of silence that doesn't come from distance. It comes from restraint, from all the words we never said, from all the pain we never named, from the love we didn't know how to offer. And for some of us, that silence was home. It was the atmosphere we were raised in, the inheritance we didn't know we accepted, the script we started following before we even knew how to write. Carl Jung believed that every family carries a psychic inheritance, an emotional script that runs through generations like blood, not just stories and names, but unresolved questions, unlived lives, unspoken grief. And here's the hardest truth of all: if we don't pause to rewrite the script, we will pass it on, even with the best of intentions. You swore you'd never raise your voice like your father did, but there it is, in your throat, when your patience snaps. You promised you'd never make your child feel small like your mother did, but suddenly you hear her words coming out of your own mouth. This isn't weakness, it's momentum, generational inertia, and the only thing strong enough to interrupt it is awareness. Zig Ziglar said, you don't build a business, you build people, and people build the business. But long before you build anyone, you shape them with your presence, with your tone, with the way you respond when they fail, with the way you listen, or don't, when they try to tell you who they are. That's the quiet power of family. The soul of family isn't forged in big moments, it's formed in the daily, often invisible choices. Do you rush, or do you stay? Do you demand, or do you ask? Do you punish, or do you guide? Do you see the person in front of you, or just the reflection of your own expectations? Legacy isn't what you leave behind when you're gone, it's what you normalize while you're here. A child growing up in a house where I'm sorry is heard learns humility. A partner who is allowed to feel instead of perform learns safety. A parent who dares to ask, what do you need from me right now? Instead of commanding, learns intimacy. Carl Jung taught that individuation, becoming truly yourself, doesn't mean abandoning your roots. It means facing them, owning what shaped you, and then choosing, with full consciousness, what you will shape next. And that's the gift family gives us when we do the work. It stops being a prison of patterns and becomes a place of possibility. It becomes a forge, not a place where we are burned by expectation, but where we are refined by love. You do not have to become what hurt you. You do not have to repeat what you resented. You do not have to keep reaching for what was never available. You are allowed to want more. You are allowed to offer more. Because when you change the way love moves through you, you change the story of your entire family line. The child you raise gently, after being raised with fear, will one day raise their own child with trust. The partner you forgive, instead of punishing, may discover how to forgive themselves. The cycle ends, not with fireworks, not with applause, but with one brave, conscious moment of choosing differently. That is legacy. That is the soul of family. Not perfection, not harmony, but love made visible again and again in the small places, in the presence you offer instead of pulling away, in the eye contact that says, I see you, in the words softly spoken that rewrite generations. I'm here and I'm not leaving, not this time. One day someone will sit in a room you once filled and remember you, not for what you achieved, but for how you made them feel. Not for your titles, but for your tone. Not for your discipline, but for your presence. They'll remember how your arms felt when they were scared. They'll remember the time you said, I'm proud of you, even if they failed. They'll remember that you listened when you didn't have to. Carl Jung said that wholeness is not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming real, fully integrated, fully known, fully you. And there is no place that demands this more deeply than family. Because in family, your mask can't hold. Your titles don't matter, your performance falls apart. What remains is your soul, raw, revealed, ready to be seen if you're brave enough to show it. Zig Ziglar once said, our children are our only hope for the future, but we are their only hope for the present. And that hope is not in your strategy, it's not in your certainty, it's not in your knowledge, it's in your willingness to be with them. Fully, honestly, without distraction, without armor, because one day they will face a world that demands everything of them. And what will steady them is the memory that home was the place where their soul was allowed to exist. That is how love becomes legacy. Not by being flawless, but by being faithful, by showing up, by staying, by repairing when you rupture, by choosing to be present when it's easier to check out, by speaking truth even when your voice shakes, by modeling forgiveness even when it feels unfair. And it's not too late, it never is. Even if the relationship is broken, even if years have passed, even if the apology feels overdue, legacy is not about time, It's about choice. And choice is always available now. Now is when you call the person you haven't spoken to. Now is when you sit beside your child and just listen. Now is when you put your hand on someone's shoulder and whisper what's never been said. Now is when you become the soul of family, not the idea, not the memory, but the living embodiment. So don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't wait for their permission. Don't wait for clarity. Speak, act. Say what's been waiting inside you, and if you need to begin in this very moment, then begin. Drop a sentence in the comments you've never said out loud. A name, a memory, a line that might change everything, because the world doesn't need more experts in detachment. It needs people who are brave enough to feel, to reconcile, to remember. The soul of family lives inside every choice you make to turn toward instead of away. Make that choice now, before it becomes a regret, before the chair is empty, before the silence becomes permanent, before the story ends without the ending you were meant to write. Love them. Let them love you. Say the thing. Be the one. That's how the soul of family is born. That's how it lives. That's how it outlives you.